All right, before the video starts, I wanted to ask you guys a question. So, do you guys want to see me make like House of the Dragon character reviews, whatever, going into the show? Because it's something I did a while ago on certain characters, but it wasn't something that I feel like a lot of people were interested in. Those videos usually didn't do that well. Do you guys want to see that? Do you guys want to see me make videos on characters like Rhaenyra, like Daemon, like Alicent Otto, all the children? Do you guys want to see that? Let me know because I'm hesitant to make those again because those take a lot of research and stuff like that, and I want to make the most accurate content possible on those. And if you guys don't really have a lot of interest in those, let me know. So yeah, I hope you guys all enjoy the video. Let's get into it.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Grease Goblin YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at House of the Dragon. I know a lot of you have asked me about why I haven't been doing videos on the trailers or anything like that. And for the most part, I think the market's been really oversaturated with videos on it for the first part of this. But two, for the most part, I haven't had a ton to talk about. I've kind of given my kind of opinions in earlier videos. But I think so far, the things that I'm excited about with House of the Dragon is I think everything for the most part looks good. I think the costume design is really good. I think a lot of the other things that I've seen people kind of criticize, I think has looked fine. I think the dragons, a little worried about the dragons. I think they've looked okay at times. I don't think they've looked terrible, but I think they've looked okay at times. And there's some things that I want to talk about the trailers so far that I've seen that I am kind of a bit like, I don't understand why they did certain things, but I'll talk about that in a second. Before we get into the video, if you guys like to like, subscribe, and comment, please do. Helps the channel grow, reach our people that might like this content as well, and let's get into the video. So, my big thing here that I'm going to compare House of the Dragon to Rings of Power on, because there have been complete opposites so far. So if you guys want me to do a Rings of Power kind of trailer breakdown or talking about the stuff right before the show happens, let me know. But Rings of Power so far has given us no information. Like, if you haven't read, like, the Silmarillion or know a lot of information about the Second Age, you'd really have no idea what's going on, right? You know it's probably about Sauron because of the title, but at the same time, there's almost no information, right? Well, House of the Dragon does the complete opposite. House of the Dragon, if you watch the trailers, you know exactly what's going to happen. Like, you know, like, the first season almost feels spoiled, right? Because you kind of know what's going to happen. Like, just based off of the trailers, you're like, okay, they're really, really pushing the idea of the succession is a huge thing. You've already shown us that Alicent and Rhaenyra are going to be at each other's throats. You've kind of already planted the seeds that we know what's going to happen, right? Viserys is going to die, like, and I get it. Right, it's based on the Dance of Dragons, which should imply that. But I think a lot of that stuff for newer viewers, like some of my friends that they have no idea what the Dance of Dragons is about. I told them, do not watch the trailer because I want to see what their actual reaction is going to be based on what's going to happen. Because I've told them that House of the Dragon Season 1 is going to be very similar to Game of Thrones Season 1. Which is what I think it's going to be. It's going to be this idea of, we have this idea where it's kind of like the king's going to die, so, Robert, and then Viserys, and then you're going to have this kind of squabbling over who becomes the next ruler, there's going to be some shady shit that happens, and then we're going to have a war. It's similar to the way Season 1 of Game of Thrones is. There's just different things going on. It's not going to be as much of a mystery, right? It's going to be kind of laid there out in the open, and there's going to be this buildup of tension building throughout the entire season. And that to me is what I think is very crucial about House of the Dragon, right? They have to be able to build their tension in a way that, one, makes sense, and two, builds it up to your big payoffs kind of towards the end of the season, whether that be, okay, again, there's a spoiler for what is probably going to happen at the end of Season 1 or in the show at some point. So again, if you don't want to see spoilers, I'd click off the video or skip ahead a little bit. Eventually, that one of Rhaenyra's children, I think it's Luke, I might be mistaken on that. I always get Rhaenyra's children mistaken, but he ends up dying at Storm's End to Aemond One Eye. So that is kind of one of the things that kind of sparks the Dance Dragons and kind of starts to mess with Rhaenyra's psyche, as we'll kind of see her go down a really bad cycle, and she really changes the character from what we're going to see in the beginning of the show to the end. Because I think Rhaenyra is what Daenerys should have been. If Daenerys was going to go or if George or D&D were going to go the Mad Queen route, it's what should have happened. Rhaenyra, mentally, through this entire series, is going to go through a lot, right? Again, more spoilers. She is going to lose a lot of her children. Some of her children are going to be presumed lost or dead to her when they're still alive. By the end of it, she really has nothing left. Daemon, who she's going to end up marrying, and she seems like she genuinely loves him. And I think from what we've seen in the books, Daemon didn't really feel the same way about her. It was more of a stepping stone for Daemon because he continuously loses power, right? If we see in the trailer, right, Daemon says, "You have an heir," right? And that's me, to his brother Viserys, who is the king at the time of the show. And he is going to continuously move down, right, the line of succession, right? Because first it starts with Daemon's at the top, right underneath Viserys. And then Rhaenyra is born, and Rhaenyra eventually is named the first in line, so Daemon becomes second. And then we then have Alicent, who gives children, right? So Alicent has, 2 males, and then also a female as well in there. So that's going to cause him to go even further. So a lot of people have speculated, myself included, that Daemon really marries Rhaenyra for the power, the way of climbing back up the line of succession and becoming possibly king when Rhaenyra would take the throne. So that's what I think is interesting and something that I hope they explore in the series. But there are a lot of things that I think are very positive, right? I think the atmosphere, they're getting down really well. Cinematography, music is something that they've always done pretty well, even in Game of Thrones in later seasons was pretty good. Outside of the Battle for Winterfell with the White Walkers, that was terrible cinematography. You couldn't even see what was going on, which you guys know. But when you look at that idea, I think a lot of things are coming together nicely. Right now, some things that scare me, okay, is what we've seen with the directors, some of the things outside of the show being said. Red Team Review, and I think it was Preston Jacobs kind of did a video on this, but there were some ideas that the show, basically it said that the show is not made for like white people or like all the rest or something like that. And it's just a very odd thing to say, which means like, because it basically just says like you're making a political agenda, and it's just like whatever. And I think they're pointing that towards Corlys Velaryon being black, which again, I don't really have a problem with, because if anything, from the trailer so far, I think he's been the best casting when it comes to actual like acting and the way he's delivering lines. I could really see him as the Sea Snake. I just don't want them to become politically motivated in the way that they use his character, right? And going too much away from what the books were, because my way of thinking, right, is that you should not be hiring people to do specific roles in movies or TV shows based upon their race or whatever, because you want to have diversity, right? Because I think the number one thing in a show should be the story. How is it reflecting what you're like adapting, right? How is that going to work? Because if you're sacrificing diversity and things like that at the sake of the story, like there's some elements to it where I don't think you can have diversity, right? Like, let's say Daenerys, right? Daenerys is one of the main characters in Game of Thrones. You can't really like come out and be someone that's Asian, or she can't really be somebody that's black or whatever, because specifically in the story, the Targaryens are a certain way and Daenerys looks a certain way. So it's like you're really like going against kind of the way everything's constructed, right? But when it comes to characters like a Corlys Velaryon, where it's like, it's not a character that I think, for characters like Corlys Velaryon, where it's not this major stigma like the Targaryens are normally very pale. They have kind of the, silver hair or whatever, the purple eyes, all that stuff. I think whoever comes into the studio or wherever you're interviewing or you're doing your audition, if that's the best character or the best actor, let him have it, right? Because I think the guy, I don't know the guy's name, I'm sorry, but the actor who's playing Corlys Velaryon, from what I've seen so far, is doing a fantastic job. He's actually, like I've said in this video, one of my favorite castings so far. I think it's like it's like something Darcy, Amelia. I'm not good with names. Matt Smith is who's playing Daemon. I think those two have been cast really well as well. I think Allison, I think they've done a lot of good casting so far. I like a lot of what they've been able to do in that aspect. But when you hear things out of like the show and what's going on, and you're hearing kind of some politically driven statements or things of that nature, I don't like that, right? Because I am someone that, look at Rings of Power for me. Rings of Power is very politically motivated. Like, I am someone that wants them to focus on the story. And if you look at where that story is coming from, it's almost a completely made up story for the most part. Because Amazon decides to do, this is for another video, but they decided to do a story on the Second Age when you already have stuff already written. You can already, like, you don't need to make up a new story. It's already, the groundwork's laid there for you. But they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. They have the rights to the Lord of the Rings appendices. Why wouldn't you just do, like, a Fourth Age TV show after Sauron? It even makes more sense with how they're trying to add more diversity into the show. It'd make a bit more sense because you're not taking pre-established characters and then changing what they are and who they are, right? Like Galadriel. You can have a strong female character, but that's not Galadriel. And that's what they're showing, that's not Galadriel. In the books, that's not who she is. So, again, that all is wrapping back to what I'm saying with House of the Dragons. It scares me when the directors and stuff like that say stuff like that. Because, in my opinion, that should not even be a thought in your mind. Now, I'm going to reference Preston Jacobs and Red Team Review. They referenced how, again, these studios are going to add in diversity and stuff like that because they're trying to attract as many people as possible. But my counter argument to that is, if you have a great story, people aren't going to care about that. I don't think majority of people that are in the Song of Ice and Fire community, or even Lord of the Rings, care about the idea of it having to be diverse or whatever. That, like, they want a good product, a good story, characters that make sense, that are accurate to their book counterparts, or at least if there are changes, or changes that make sense, right? You can do changes to characters. Robb Stark was a character that was massively changed from book to show, and it was something that was very positive. Even looking at Game of Thrones, right? It was a show that is it is probably the most popular show when you look at the beginning of it, and getting into like season 5. Actually, the later seasons were very popular as well, but they were hated. So it was a show that you didn't need all this diversity in. It was a show that people cared about because they could get behind all of these different type of characters, all these different motives, all of these different personalities. And you even did see diversity as well, but it's something that I think is very much affecting how Hollywood goes about making shows and stuff like that. So that is kind of my general thoughts. So yeah, thank you guys for the kind words you guys have been giving me the last few weeks or whatever. And we're going to be covering House of the Dragon when it comes out, every episode, doing reviews, breakdowns, theories, all that stuff. As well as for Rings of Power. So again, if you are excited for Rings of Power, I'm not really excited for Rings of Power, but I'm still going to cover it because I'm interested on the direction that they go, and if maybe the trailers have been misleading and they've been holding back information, or maybe that the trailers have been giving it a bad rap, where they've been trying to politically motivate those. I don't know, but thank you guys all for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, You haven't been paying attention.